welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 197 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. 197, Mackelly.
Wow. I tell you
Today we'll be discussing chapter 53 of A Storm of Swords. That's Tyrion 6.
And as always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. We'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing well. We reached a really cool milestone this week.
Do tell. Do tell, he says, pretending he doesn't know.
We had our first 10,000 download week. So we had 10,000 downloads in the past 7 days,
awesome.
which is great.
That's great.
And I was watching it. It was almost like an election race. I was like constantly refreshing the screen to watch the numbers, and it was like 11:30, and we were still like, I don't know, 50 some away from 10,000 that night. And so I waited up till midnight, and that first night we came up like 24 downloads short of 10,000. And I was like, oh, we missed it. And then we crushed it the next day. And so that was awesome. But yeah, that was very exciting. And but then today I was walking past the family room, and I looked in, and Molly and my niece were in there watching some YouTube video, and it was what looked like some teenage kids. They were trying to bake a cake with each of them having a sense removed. One of them had a blindfold over, and the other had things over their ears so they couldn't hear, and the other one had tape across her mouth. I think.
Okay, I get the idea.
And they were trying to bake a cake, and I'll just say it wasn't something that I particularly found engaging or anything. But
so you did more than just walk past. Then you stopped and watched for a while.
I walked past, and I heard them giggling at the TV, and I could just hear like kids kind of like shouting at each other, and so I looked in, and I was like, what is this? So I stood there watching it, and in the corner I could see that video alone had 4.7 million views. And I was like, oh. I just turned around and walked away. I thought, maybe we picked the wrong medium for maximum ears as far as we're concerned. But no, I'm very proud of reaching 10,000 downloads this week. And I hope it continues to go up from there, but very excited.
Yeah, it's great. So
how about you?
Oh, I'm fine. I mean, as our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers will find out, I'm having some work done on the house, and it's quite noisy. And our most recent wildfire side chat was interrupted by the builders coming in, and then by Carson coming in to ask if we were recording. I was like, yes, and it's the one we can't edit. So this is going on the show. So when the builder came to the door, I said, again, the sustainers will know this, but I said, can you go and talk to my wife? And so he did. She's sequestered in the den with the dogs, and we have a third dog in the house to add to the joy.
Okay.
My mother-in-law went out of town and without any warning brought her dog round for us to look after. So we've got 3 dogs.
All right.
And so he went and knocked on the door to that. Bedlam. The dogs go berserk. Carson squeezes through the door and leaves the dogs behind. The dogs get into a huge fight. But she just ignores them and keeps talking to Alejandro, our guy. And she said, I talked to her afterwards, and she said, just decided that, the strongest would survive. I was like, okay.
One of them's going to come through it.
Anyway, he's done for the day at least, so we can record this in relative peace and quiet, hopefully.
All right. Did that all happen while we were recording?
my conversation with her was between that recording and this
Oh, okay.
recording.
But when the
But
dogs were
the dogs
going,
going berserk was all during. Yeah, I could hear
I
it.
did not hear it.
I
I
could hear
didn't
it.
hear it at all
Well,
on my end.
I had three closed doors between me and it, but I could hear it.
Oh,
It
okay.
was bedlam.
Well, that's
Yeah.
you'll have that. You'll
And,
someday we'll have our own studio that we can
yeah.
record in complete silence in, but not today.
The other thing I was going to mention was, did I mention that I scored an own goal?
I
Like,
don't think
oh,
so.
I didn't mention that. Wow, really, I suppressed that one, didn't I? So you understand the concept of an own goal, right?
I do. Yes.
For anyone who's completely alien to soccer, it's when you score a goal, but in the wrong net
In
for
your
the
own
other team.
goal.
Um,
Yes.
my team lost the final of the competitive soccer league 3-2, and I scored an own
Oh.
goal in the final.
Oh no. I had not heard how the
Mm,
final went. You
yeah,
were doing so well
yeah,
too.
yeah. We were 2-0 up in the final.
Oh.
And I made it 2-2 with a
Oh
terrible,
no.
terrible, terrible own goal. But well, this is going to have some immediacy because this week I played soccer and I scored an own goal, and this was this was more spectacular than the one in the final. This was a really good. If I'd been a striker, they would have applauded me roundly for my skills. But unfortunately, I was a defender and it was just more ineptitude. But all of the people who would tease me, which is like everybody I play with, jumped on this. Simon with another own
Uh-huh.
goal.
Oh
Uh,
no. Oh well, hey, you got it out of your system, hopefully.
well,
What's the chances of a third?
uh, I think I've told you before. I've scored two own goals in a single game before.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it looks like you're playing for the other team when you
That's a
do that.
yeah,
Once could be
that's
considered an
impressive.
accident.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what you want on the scorer sheet at the end of the
Hmm.
game for
Hmm.
sure.
We have a because we work for a statistics company. We have an app at work that tracks all the statistics of all the competitive soccer. And
Oh.
when I joined, the app had to be revised to account for own goals.
Add that
Hmm.
category
Yeah,
in
because
just for
they'd
you.
never thought of it. They were like, "How do you account for an own goal?" Because every goal gets assigned to the person who scored it, but an own goal can't be
Right.
assigned to that person because he's on the wrong team.
So you've changed the game
I've changed the game.
fundamentally once you got it.
According to the app, I am the most recent and the original scorer of own goals in this league.
Bookends.
Hmm.
Well, you made your mark. That's what
Yeah.
matters. You'll be remembered.
We went to the beach this weekend as well. It was very nice. We had a nice time at the beach.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was good. You had a good time, good weather and all.
Yeah, the weather forecast wasn't great, but it actually turned out just beautiful. I
All right.
uh, the only thing is they live in a condominium, which I mean, I don't know if people know what a condominium is, but basically they have dogs. And funnily enough, they have two dogs and they were dog sitting a third dog, just as we're doing. So they had three
Oh,
dogs in their house, and those
parallel.
three dogs are all on a hair trigger for waking up in the morning. So I would wait. I sort of wake up early anyway, and I would wake up early, and then I wouldn't want to stir because that would trigger the dogs, and then the dogs have to be put on a lead and walked out of the house to go to the bathroom,
Okay.
which
Right,
nobody
right, right.
wants. So I would lie in bed for like an hour and a half, like
Oh,
desperate to pee.
that's pretty miserable.
Yeah, I was like, this is the so the second that was the first morning. The second and third morning I was there, I just got up as soon as I was ready and snuck straight out of the house and just walked to the beach. Let them,
There you go.
yeah, I was like, they'll bark, they'll fall back asleep again. But I ended up with like these both mornings I had like an hour long walk on the beach because everybody else was going to be sleeping for another hour. So
Right, you were just marooned out there.
pretty much, yeah. I mean, I didn't even take a key, so it's like I had to wait until I saw life. But it was really
Well,
nice.
I'm glad.
The coast
Yeah,
of North Carolina is very nice, and this my friend's place is great. So
that's fantastic, and it's always great when it's a friend's place because
yeah,
usually that's a lot cheaper than when it's not a
oh
friend's
heck
place.
yeah, oh heck yeah, yeah.
Well, that's good
And
stuff.
and he works from there, so it's set up for work as well. So I can go out, I can go down there and work if I need to. And
Perfect.
it's really good.
That's the perfect kind of friend you want to find
I
right
know.
there.
I got to stop beating him at tennis. Gotta let him win, keep him sweet. All right then, let's get down to business. How did we leave Tyrion Lannister? Last we saw of Tyrion, he rode out to welcome who he thought would be Prince Doran Martell to King's Landing. Instead, Tyrion discovered that it was Doran's younger brother, Oberyn Martell, that would be joining the King's small council. Oberyn had a single focus for his time in King's Landing, to see that justice is finally done for his sister Ellia's death at the hands of the Lannister men. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Tyrion dines alone with his new wife Sansa, which I guess means he didn't dine alone. She's taken it personally that the food is overcooked. She apologizes. He reassures her that it's not her fault. Then she feels bad for apologizing. Tyrion tries unsuccessfully to relieve her remorse for the lackluster dinner fare, as he's got plenty of other matters to vex him.
By his count, he's got his nephew, sister, father, and the newly arrived Dornishmen to keep his blood pressure elevated. Since Prince Oberyn's arrival, there's been a brawl with some Tyrell men, and nearly a second one when Olenna Tyrell called Oberyn's paramour the Serpent's Whore.
Yeah, that's not going to go over well.
No.
When dinner ends, in the usual awkward silence, Sansa asks for leave to visit the godswood, a near nightly ritual she's developed. Tyrion suggests that maybe he could accompany her sometime. Sansa quickly shoots down the idea, saying he'd just be bored.
When Sansa leaves, Tyrion attempts to sort out Littlefinger's financial books. They are labyrinthine in their complexity, and Tyrion gets a feeling that there's something fishy going on. However, before he can get much further, he's summoned to the Tower of the Hand by his father.
Upon arrival, Tyrion can tell something big has happened. Joff and Cersei are nearly giddy. The always stoic Tywin hands Tyrion a parchment. Rosalind caught a fine fat trout. Her brothers gave her a pair of wolf pelts for her wedding. The seal on the paper is the twins of House Frey.
Before a puzzled Tyrion can ask its meaning, Joffrey blurts out that Robb Stark is dead. Cersei chimes in that the war is basically over. The River Lords will shortly see that they can't stand against the combined power of Casterly Rock, Highgarden, and Dorne. Tywin agrees that most will fold, and he plans to offer generous terms to all who bend the knee, -1. Gregor Clegane is headed to Harrenhal to clear out the brave companions for good. Brendan Blackfish Tully will be powerless to mount a retaliation as long as Edmure remains hostage of the Freys.
Joff won't hear of generous terms. All traitors will be killed. On top of that, he wants Robb Stark's head to give to Sansa at his wedding and make her kiss it. The idea is panned, by none more so than Tyrion, who calls Joff a monster. Joff returns the insult. Tyrion says if he is, Joff should be more careful. Kings are dying like flies. Joff says he could have Tyrion's tongue out for that.
Cersei jumps into the squabble, but Tywin shuts it all down by telling Joffrey of how Mad King Aerys had similar ideas about cutting out tongues, ask Sir Ilyn, and announcing that he's king. He further educates Joffrey on being kingly, adding that when your foes go to their knees, you help them back to their feet, else no one will ever bend the knee, and no true king ever needs to say, I am the king.
Joff surprises all in attendance when he retorts that his grandfather can talk of Aerys, but that Tywin was afraid of the king. It was Robert who killed Rhaegar and took the throne, while Tywin hid under Casterly Rock. In cold courtesy, Tywin thanks his grandson for the wisdom and asks Sir Kevin and Grand Maester Pycelle to escort the clearly tired king to his chamber. Joff protests, but is ignored.
Cersei immediately apologizes on Joffrey's behalf, claiming it's Joffrey's willful nature that's the cause. Tywin thinks it's more stupidity than anything else. Cersei blames Robert for teaching Joffrey ideas like a king acts boldly, and Tywin hiding under Casterly Rock during Robert's rebellion. Tywin says he's not fighting this war to seat a Robert II. He questions what Cersei was teaching the boy before sending her out of the room too.
Now alone with his father, Tyrion thinks Joff seems more like Aerys III. But Tywin thinks Joff is young, so there's time. The boy just needs a sharp lesson. Remembering his own sharp lesson, Tyrion almost feels sorry for the boy. Almost. Tyrion changes the subject, wanting to know how long his father and Lord Walder Frey had been plotting the murder of Robb Stark and why Tyrion wasn't told.
Tywin did not trust Tyrion's loose lips. Only those who played a role were told. Tywin confides in Tyrion that it's Oberyn Martell's presence in King's Landing that he's been considering. Doran Martell is cautious and reasoned, but Oberyn has always been half mad. Tyrion offers to show Oberyn the brothels of King's Landing. Tywin is not amused.
Tywin divulges that he plans to not give the mountain to Oberyn, as Tyrion had believed. Tywin thinks Gregor has been too useful to give up. Instead, he's going to tell Oberyn the murder of Elia and her children was the work of Amory Lorch, and that he acted alone to win the favor of the new king. Tyrion is doubtful that this will appease Oberyn Martell.
Tyrion comments on the phrase so blatantly breaking guest rights. Tywin points out that the blood is on Walder's hands, not his. But Tyrion knows better. No way always cautious Walder would do this without protection. Tywin admits that there was an agreement and a price, but that the price was cheap. Some Lannisters will marry some Freys, and Aemon Frey will be the new Lord of Riverrun. Roose Bolton becomes Warden of the North and takes home Arya Stark.
Tyrion is as baffled as Simon looks right now. Everyone has searched high and low for Arya with no luck. Surely she's dead. Tywin says maybe Littlefinger succeeded where even Varys failed. Roose plans to marry Arya to his bastard son Ramsay. It's all planned out. The Boltons will fight the Ironborn and work to bring the other Stark bannermen to heel. Before long, everyone will be worn out and looking for peace. Then the North will go to Tyrion through his son by Sansa, if he's man enough to breed a son with her. Tyrion wonders aloud whether Sansa will be more fertile before or after he tells her that they've murdered her mother and brother. Oof, that's a tough situation, as if their marriage wasn't strained enough as it is already.
Yeah. But I mean, she knows that there's a pressure to give a heir. I mean, that's what marriage meant in those days,
Right. Yeah.
And also, the other, just noodling on that just for a second. The other thing about that is that she actually might want the same thing there. She actually might want her child to take over Winterfell compared to the alternatives.
Oh,
Roose
sure.
Bolton,
Right. Ramsay and Arya.
Ramsay and Arya, whoever Arya is. Yeah.
Right. So Sansa quickly
Ah.
rejects the idea of Tyrion joining her in the godswood, like shuts him down the minute the idea comes out of Tyrion's mouth. She says, no, you will be bored. There's no prayers or anything. I just sit there and listen to the leaves rustle. Is it why we think it is?
Yes, it is. What else could it be? I
Right.
mean, why else? She doesn't long for. I mean, first of all, she's got to play things a bit cooler, yeah. Because when he says this food isn't very good, she had nothing to do with its preparation, but she apologizes for it. But when he says, "Can I come with you sometime?" She's like, "No."
No.
It's like, it's totally out of character, and you're giving the game away.
That I hadn't thought about that. Right. Yes, she's so submissive to him in every other way.
Exactly.
And then,
She needs to, yeah. She needs to say, "I'll have the cook fired," and no, you're not coming with me.
Or,
Then,
sure, you could come with me. We're going to sit there for hours, not talking. It's
definitely not kissing.
But, I mean, what we're talking about, of course, is her either expecting or hoping to see Dantas Hollard in the Godswood like she had been meeting with him previously.
Yes.
And, last we saw of Dantas and the two of them together, their last interaction, she had told Dantas she was no longer in need of his escape plan because she was going to marry Willis Tyrell and become the Lady of Highgarden. But then suddenly, like within the next chapter or two, Littlefinger knew about the plan, and the Lannisters married her to Tyrion before the Tyrells could marry her to Willis. So now maybe is the plan back on, or maybe she's hoping to get the plan back on again.
Or she goes every night in the hope of rekindling the plan.
Right,
and Dantas
yes.
never shows up. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to wonder, was when she told Dantas it was off, was he like, oh, okay, I went that, he
I did what I could.
protested.
Thanks again for saving my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say though, talking about Sansa and Tyrion's son or child becoming the new Lord Lady of Winterfell, that is going to take a significant improvement in their relationship. Not just the physical side of it, but also they have to get on the same page. And at the moment, progress seems glacial. Like
Right.
there's no thawing of this at all. He doesn't seem to be able to say the right thing to her, and she doesn't seem to be able to trust him at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though certainly from our POVs of Tyrion, we feel like she should trust him,
Right.
but that is not that she is not doing that. She still is saying exactly what she wants him to hear.
Right.
Sorry,
And
what she thinks he wants to hear.
yes, yes. And when, Tyrion, the very last sentence of the chapter, when he wonders how fertile she'll be once she hears the news of her mother and
Yeah,
brother, no, not
yeah.
only will, if she doesn't want, if she's not trying to get the plan for escape back on right now, that certainly might ratchet that up a notch to,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
but
yeah.
also her lack of trust, the frostiness between the two of them isn't going to be thawed much by that.
I will say though, I don't think he wants to sleep with her yet. I mean, again, on some levels, um, I think this does give him a sort of 6 month get out of jail card. Hey, we just murdered
Sure,
her mother and her brother.
sure.
I am not forcing myself on her until she's over that.
Yeah. With anyone
Oh,
but Tywin.
after murdering her father and sister.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, anyone but Tywin might understand. I'm not sure
right.
if Tywin.
I'm not saying he can play that card with everyone, but he'll play that
Right.
card with anyone who criticizes him.
Sure. Yes.
With
Yes.
one exception. He'll play it with Tywin, but Tywin won't care.
True.
So Littlefinger's books are overly complicated, it seems, and he's supposed to be a mastermind of finance. Uh, does he have his own system, or is he doing some cooking of those books?
Right.
I think the suggestion is Tyrion's suspicious, thinks
Right.
there's something suspicious here. But what's not clear is what his suspicion is. I mean, obviously, the suspicion would be that Littlefinger is stealing from the realm, but I think Littlefinger is wealthy anyway. He probably doesn't need to steal, but then, given the nature of the man, maybe he would steal just because he could and could get away with it. But to
Well.
what end, really? I mean,
Yeah.
he's wealthy and he's powerful as it is. And it would be a huge risk to steal from the crown.
Right. He's wealthy from his business ventures that he's made since leaving the Fingers.
Right,
He's not inherently wealthy because of his station, his original station in life. Being from the littlest finger.
right. But I will say that typically those who are making money are wealthier than those who are relying on money that they inherited.
Right. Well, sure. Sure. Yeah.
Unless
Yeah.
you happen to be really, really wealthy, sort of like, live on a rock made of gold kind of wealthy.
There is that. That's a whole other level of wealth right there.
Right. But if you're making money hand over fist and it's ongoing, then you're going to be wealthy. And those who live on old stories and old histories they're spending money faster than they're making it.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course he's up jumped his station a good bit since this
Oh yeah.
story started. He's now Lord of Harrenhal and Lord
And
Paramount of the
apparently,
Trident.
yeah, apparently practically on the doorstep of it. I mean, like it's going to be cleared out for him and ready waiting for him when he
Right.
arrives.
After he
Which
woos Liza Aaron.
right.
So, but
Yeah,
we
and if he does that successfully, I mean, think about that. Think about the power that gives him. I mean, Harrenhal, presumably, the castle itself is not particularly a source of wealth, but the lands around it would be.
right.
And with Lysa owning the Vale, the two of them would become serious players in the realm.
Yeah, absolutely. We've discussed the idea before of Littlefinger skimming from the crowd from the crown. Um, is this the beginning of possibly Tyrion uncovering this truth?
Yeah.
You know, this is this is the kind of thing that sometimes Martin has been known to do in this story. Give little nuggets that seem inconsequential at the time, and then later they're revealed as a bigger deal, like as comes up in this chapter, Tywin's letters that Tyrion interrupts in the
Yeah,
first Tyrion
yeah.
chapter of this book with the wars are won with quills and ravens. That turned out to be a major deal, but at the time it just seemed like I'm busy. I'm writing some letters.
Yeah.
So,
I will
eh,
say, if Littlefinger, I could understand Littlefinger skimming off the top to fund his business ventures to get him started. But given that presuming his wealth is not just a smoke and mirrors thing, he is actually wealthy. If I were him, I would pay it back. I would make the books line up again, so to keep my nose clean, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
That would all make sense to me, but to continue to steal, you know, you've achieved, like you said, you've achieved from nothing a real status in the realm, and you're going to risk it for a few extra gold pieces when you're making money hand over fist anyway. It just
Right.
seems daft.
And he's certainly uh he thinks far enough ahead usually, it seems like, that he would think,
Right,
okay, now I'm going to cover my tracks here. Unless he figures he's too smart and nobody else is going to figure
right.
out what he's
But the
done.
one thing is, you'd need to have a get out plan, because if you know that you're going to be sent on this trip to the Vale, someone's going to look at those books after you're gone,
Right.
and you better not leave anything in those books that, I mean, right, great, make them as complicated as you want, but people are going to, forensically analyze those things.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you're found wanting, they're going to come for you.
Yes. Yeah. Especially with
Being made
how
Lord of
much the
Harrenhal is not exactly you know, a safe position.
no, it's not. Especially with how in debt the crown is. If the crown wasn't so in debt, maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal. But
Yeah, so is that an alternative explanation of what Tyrion's finding? Is it the depth of the debt? I mean, what do we know of this debt?
well, we know that the crown is millions in debt. I think they're like 6 million golden dragons in debt alone to Casterly Rock.
Oh, to Casterly Rock.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're also a debt to the Iron Bank for millions and other sources as well. Can't
Hmm.
remember off the top of my head what they all are, but yes, they're very much in debt. So wouldn't look great if all of a sudden it was discovered, oh wait, Littlefinger's been pocketing millions of gold dragons himself.
Well, but that's a point though, because stealing from the crown is one thing, but taking your cut of a loan from a bank, that might be something you might do and not think twice about it and try to hide. You
Right.
know what I mean? If
Yeah.
if you've got tax revenue coming in and you steal that, that's a different crime than if you arrange a $6 million loan and you take your 10% for yourself
Sure.
without
Right.
telling anyone.
Yes, it was a fee that I pay myself.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
in the books. Read it.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe that is it. Maybe it's more to do with the debt and the because I just don't think Littlefinger is stupid enough to just steal outright from the crown. But that loan from the banks is an area where he might have got light
Could be.
fingered.
Yeah, I could see that. So we get some questions answered from the Red Wedding, which is the name given to Cat 7. We had wondered whether it was Roose or Walder that was spearheading the ambush on the Starks because of that toast that Roose gave. Cat thought it was a bit of a threat to Walder that, don't forget, I have your grandchildren with my
Yeah.
son at the Dreadfort. And that made us wonder, well, who's really in charge here of this? Is it Walder or is it Roose? Because we both saw it in different ways. You saw it in a way that it might have been Roose saying, "Don't forget about us. We're on your side too." And I saw it as Roose saying, "You better do what I want you to do
Yeah.
because I have your grandkids hostage." So, but as it turns out, it seems that it was Walder in time. At least the context that we got in this chapter, Walder and Roose seem to very much have been in cahoots, in communication with each
They're
other.
both beneficiaries, and therefore it seems like they both were in on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some wording like uh, when Tywin says to Tyrion, "I suppose you would have spared the boy and told Lord Walder you had no need of his allegiance." That makes me think that Walder reached out to Roose and said, "Hey, would you like my allegiance? For a price, I will give it to you." So,
Yeah.
it seems like it would be awfully weird for Tywin to have been the one to reach out in that instance. If Walter's the one saying, "I need I'll give you my allegiance."
Yeah. I still think, looking back on that toast though, that Roose at that moment was in a very vulnerable position, and Walder could have expanded the plan to include him. So I do think some of it was like, here's a couple of reminders.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think it really does prove your point that they genuinely were in cahoots beforehand.
Yeah, it certainly seems like Roose at least knew that something was going to happen because he went and, because the Northmen stormed in and he went out and apparently put on armor and came back
Yeah,
in his armor.
yeah,
So, but yeah, I guess ultimately what we learned was that Tywin was indeed in cahoots with at least Walder, but it seems like also Roose as well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also it seems that Ebuer is alive and being held captive to keep the Blackfish and any of his supporters in check. That makes a certain amount of sense. I can see, but at the same time, I guess by if Edmure were to be killed, Brynden would become the Lord of Riverrun by uh,
Right.
by rights. Although actually that's an interesting question because both Lysa and uh,
Cat
Cat
had
have living children. So do they
right.
take precedence over Brynden? But
That's a
certainly
good
he
question.
he he
Yeah.
would have a right to claim it anyway. But now he doesn't, and so and also he can't really fight the Freys while his nephew is in their clutches.
Right.
Um, and then sort of like for the general future of the Riverlands, Tywin reckons that oh, most of them are going to bend the knee, with the possible exception of the Mallisters and the Blackwoods. The Mallisters and Blackwoods might fight on. He thinks that the Freys can handle the Mallisters, keep them pinned in Seaguard, and with some inducement, he could get the Brackens to happily attack the Blackwoods. Now that's an ancient enmity, right? The Brackens and the
Right.
Blackwoods. You've talked about
Yeah.
that in background before, so yeah,
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. Just uh, fuel that fire, and that'll help to keep your enemy's enemy uh, becomes your friend.
Right. Yeah, I I found it noteworthy that Tywin thinks that Jonas Bracken is the weak spot to turn. Playing on that feud that you just mentioned between the Brackens and the Blackwoods, there was no mention of Titus Blackwood. We if with the right inducement Titus Blackwood would turn, it was Jonas Bracken, and there's also no mention of others like the Pipers or the Vances.
Yeah, but I don't I think it's who has the most loyalty to the Starks and the Tullys. I think that's the real question here. It's I think the Blackwoods would turn on the Brackens if the roles were reversed, but the Blackwoods have a stronger alliance with the Starks and Tullys. I think that's the
Right.
point.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yes.
And that
And
I think everybody sort of south and east of River Run is already sort of, they know which way this is going, so they're going to bend the knee. It's the ones north and west who might try to fight on a little bit.
sure. And some of the houses in the southwestern portion of the Riverlands are in a bind like Brendan Blackfish Tully is. Mark Piper was at the Red Wedding, and that is his father Clement might be held in check just like the Blackfishes. And then Carl Vance, I believe, was also at that wedding, and he is the Lord of Wayfarer's Roost. So he's also either dead or been taken captive, likely to keep the Vances honest. They probably took him captive to keep them on the you know on the up and up on the
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Lannister side. And then we also learned that Cat was supposed to have been taken alive, which makes the Hound almost wrong in his assumption that she was dead last chapter, which, as we discussed at the time, was why it would have been so hard to leave as he wanted Arya to do,
Right.
because she we just can't we couldn't know for sure that she was killed, and they were right there at the gates of the castle. So, would have been really it would have been really really difficult for anybody to have left in that situation, and it turns out she was supposed to have been taken captive. So
Did they explain why they wanted her captive?
I don't think
Yeah,
I don't think
I'm trying to think what the
Tywin gave an
advantage would be
explanation.
exactly, because later on we're going to discuss Roose taking Arya back to the north. It actually is helpful to have everybody dead if, as I suspect, that's not really Arya, because whoever
It
Roose has got, it's not Arya.
would have been awfully weird if the Hound was like, "Leave with me. We've got to flee now." And then Arya went to try and run into the castle, and the Hound hit her in the back of the head with an axe, and then carried her in and dropped her at the feet of,
Yeah. Is this
of
who you're
Roose
looking for?
Bolton.
Yeah.
I wanted to turn you in. I want the reward.
Yeah,
So yes, you're right. Cat would be able to,
yeah.
you know,
To
be a
blow the
problem in
cover
that
of that,
situation.
yeah. But I guess, I mean, if she was captive, they could bring her to King's Landing, do what they want with her. It's kind of surprising that they wanted to keep her alive. I mean, she would be their mortal enemy forevermore. They could never bring her
Absolutely.
around. Well, I
Yes.
suppose they could, because they still got Sansa, you know?
Oh, they could make her behave.
Yeah,
That's about the best
yeah,
that they would be able to get out
yeah.
of her. And then flipping the question in the opposite direction, was she killed because she killed Jingle Bell? Because she didn't need to be killed there. After Robb died and she killed Jingle Bell, she was easily subdued. She was, losing her battle with uh, sanity, basically, and very
Yeah.
easily would have been subdued at that
I
point.
wonder if that's a bit of vengeance from the phrase that they blamed her. She brokered the original deal that was betrayed, and so they wanted. Because I don't think it was like, oh, jingle bells, take that, because Walder Frey just didn't care.
Right. Yeah, it's just weird. At least Tywin was under the impression they were going to keep her
Yeah.
captive,
Makes
but
you
then
think
decided to
that it
kill
was
her.
more preordained than that, and if so, it would be Walder Frey saying, and also it also opens up Riverrun again. I mean, they're saying Elmer Frey is going to be Lord of Riverrun, right? Emmon Frey.
Elmer Frey's like 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's a Frey. Give me a break.
It's a
They
Frey,
all
begins with an
they're
E.
all they all count the same.
Yeah.
So Tyrion thinks the phrase broke guest right in a very big way, which is true, and Tywin makes a point of washing his hands of any ownership of that. I guess his thing was kill Robb Stark, and how Walder Frey went about it was up to him.
Well, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyrion doesn't let him off the hook that easily, though,
No.
does he?
No.
He points out pretty much that though that's technically true, the blood wasn't on your hands. It's not that hard to deduce that the always cautious phrase wouldn't have done this without
Mm.
protection from some bigger
But that
source.
always cautious thing actually goes to why they might do it in this sneaky way.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than in battle, open, face to face like that.
So Tywin is pleased with the price that the murder of Robb Stark cost him. Doesn't seem like it's too much. What was that price, Mackelly? You're the one with the details.
Well, so first, as you mentioned just a minute ago, Emmon Frey is the new Lord of
If he
Riverrun.
can, if he can out wrestle Elmer for the job.
That's right. It's going to be one of the two, and that is if they can oust Brendan Blackfish
Yes,
Tully
because
from Riverrun in the
Riverrun has
first place.
proven to be pretty obstinate,
Yeah,
obdurate.
it's really hard to siege because
Yeah,
of the rivers, especially with how high the rivers are flowing right
right,
now. They might they might not get to Riverrun until this spring.
right, yeah, true.
And so, just quick reminder: Emmon Frey is the second son of Lord Walder, and he is the husband to Jenna Lannister,
Right,
Tywin's
right, right,
sister.
right.
And they have two dead sons, Cleos and Tion, and then two living sons, Lionel and Walder, who they call Red Walder. So, but this is even better for Lord Walder than his daughter marrying the Lord of Riverrun. His son is now the Lord
Yeah,
of Riverrun,
which he also got.
theoretically. Right. Which is just more evidence to me that choosing Rosalind as Edmure's bride was strictly to keep Edmure happy until the ambush,
Oh,
with no plans of her
right.
being the Lady of Riverrun, because the deal for Emmon to become the Lord of Riverrun was probably
Yeah,
done
yeah.
and hammered out before the wedding.
So is that the reason for Rosalind's tears? Is it she knew that she wasn't marrying someone and getting to be Lady of Riverrun, but
Oh.
she was always going to be, man, I'm saddled to this guy? You know,
The former
warmer
Lord of
lot,
Riverrun, the ousted, that
yeah.
that's an
Assistant to
idea.
the.
That is an idea I had not thought
Yeah.
of before. Yes, maybe she was like, "Ugh, this guy, he used to be somebody."
And some Lannisters have to
Uh,
marry some Freys.
yeah. So Lancel and Davin both have to marry some
Are they
Freys.
both Kevin's?
Lancel,
Are they both Kevin's children?
Lancel's Kevin's
Uh-huh.
oldest. We're pretty familiar with Lancel. He was the one that was sleeping with
Yeah,
Cersei
yeah,
and
yeah,
spying
yeah.
on Cersei for Tyrion. He's Kevin's eldest. But then Davin is Stafford Lannister's son.
Oh, Stafford,
Stafford
yeah.
is the one that died at
Right,
Oxcross. He is the cousin slash brother-in-law of Tywin.
right.
And then there was a mention of a Joy needing to marry a baseborn son of Lord Walder. So I think this is the first reference of Joy. It's Joy Hill, technically. She's the 10-year-old daughter of Tyrion Lannister, who is Tywin's younger brother. He's the one that was lost at sea about like 8 or 9 years ago, trying to explore Old Valyria and
Yeah,
find
yeah, yeah.
Bright
I'm glad that
Roar,
was less
the
than 10 years ago. That's good.
yeah. So yeah, and that's the cost on the Lannister
So
side.
is Joy baseborn as well? Is that why she's
Yes,
Joy Hill?
she is.
Hill's
Yes,
the
exactly.
the bastard name in the Westlands. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And then the last bit of the price is that Roose got to become Warden of the North as we expected. And before we get to the last bit, let's just we did mention that we we guessed, or maybe I should say knew,
Well,
what
you
Roose
might have
wanted
known, but
for
I was
his
guessing.
efforts. Although I would say Tywin doesn't sound entirely convinced that Roose will have success in bringing the other Stark bannermen into the fold,
Yeah,
based on
well,
the
again,
things he
this
says
goes
here.
to the tactics after the Red Wedding. I mean, I think there were two ways to go about it, and he chose the wrong way. Tywin is a subtle thinker
Sure.
like myself. Roose is a,
Uh huh.
uh,
Right. Bruce is a blunt object
yeah,
thinker, I
exactly.
guess.
It seems
We're going to kill them
kill
all.
them
That's
all.
how we're
Yeah,
going to do it. Yeah, Tywin says that he's going to, like, the wording is something like allow the Dreadfort to fight the Ironborn for a few years and see if they can bring the Stark Bannermen
yeah.
to heel. And then he follows up by spring, they should all be ready to kneel. And then that's when you'll go north with your son by Sansa. So it seems kind of like it's a
I
temporary,
know. And
you know,
Roose probably knows this too. You know,
oh, well, yeah,
I mean, if
that's
news that
possible.
Sansa does, do we know that Roose knows? Yes, Roose does know that Sansa is married to Tyrion, so he's got to
Right.
know
Yes.
that his tenure is limited, if that's the case. I mean, but at
That's
the same
true.
time, in the meantime, he can, you know, enrich himself as much as he wants.
That's yeah, yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about the fact that he does realize, and this is the last bit, that he's getting the younger sister of the two Stark
Right,
sisters.
right. But
Because that's the last bit. He's getting Arya Stark, who he's going to marry to his bastard son Ramsay.
yeah, but that does create you know, okay, so let's ignore the fact that we don't think Arya really is in his clutches, but he takes Arya up and marries her to Ramsay, and he legitimizes Ramsay in some way. So now he Roose stays in the Dreadfort, and Ramsay and Arya go and rebuild Winterfell, and become the
Right.
Lords of the North. It
Boy, I
seems.
bet if that's the case, I bet Ramsay is he's thinking, "Why did I burn this
I
place?
know all this work I've got to
Should have
do.
been
Yeah,
lighter on it."
exactly. Uh,
Yeah, right.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems like an awful lot. I mean, what's the sales pitch? I mean, the sales pitch is there's a Stark in Winterfell.
Right.
Arya. None of you remember what Arya looks like, right? Just checking, just checking. Yeah, this is Arya.
She's got dark hair. Must be
Yeah.
Arya. uh yeah, you're right. And also because Roose must know that at some point Sansa and Tyrion are going to go north.
Conceivably. I mean, that might not happen. I mean, Tyrion could be made Lord of Casterly Rock.
True. That's
And that's
we know that Tyrion that Tywin said that will never happen, but
Roose was
Roose
not in the
doesn't know
room
that.
when that happened. Yeah, yeah.
Right, yes.
Um, the one
Yeah.
clue as to this Arya thing that's been given in this chapter is that Tywin said that Tyrion says, "I thought Arya was dead," and Tywin says, "Well, Renly was dead until the Battle of the Blackwater,"
Right.
which we are confident. In fact, I think you know the specifics of this now, right? I'd forgotten it, of course, but um, Renly's armor was occupied by someone, and everyone thought that Renly had come back to fight, but it was in fact, fill me in.
I think we know
You clearly
that it
know,
was
so
I
put you on the
do. It
spot
was
here.
I've drawn a blank on his name. It's Loris's older brother,
Lewis,
Willis's younger, the
the
middle
middle brother,
uh the middle
the middle
Tyrell brother.
Tyrell. Okay,
I'm drawing a blank on
well,
his
that's
name.
fine. I mean, it's not relevant to it, but basically, it isn't hard to convince people that someone who they believed was dead is alive if you just dress them up the right way.
Garland Tyrell.
Garland Tyrell, well done. So that clearly is what they're doing here. They've got somebody who looks a bit like Arya, and Roose is now in possession of this person, and they're going to head north and play her
Yeah,
off.
and there's another little detail in
Go
there
on.
when Tyrion says she's surely dead. And Tywin says, so was Renly until the Blackwater. Tyrion asks, what do you mean? Tywin says, well, maybe Littlefinger succeeded where Varys and Jocelyn Bywater failed. So, what association is he making here?
Well, they
Who?
both looked for Arya, right?
Jocelyn and Varys both looked. Yeah, everybody was looking for
Right.
Arya, but those two specifically. So, uh, do do we recall possibly another northern girl that
No.
Littlefinger said he'd find a
Don't
place
make me
for?
say it because I do remember who you're talking about. You're talking about Jane Poole.
It's possible.
Yeah,
She's a Winterfell
she's a
girl
Winterfell
of
girl.
similar enough
Sh-
age, not quite the right
She'd have the
age, but
right
close enough.
accent. She would know
Yes,
Winterfell like the back of her hand.
right. She knows the Stark family
Yeah, but they know her, but thankfully
intimately,
they're all dead, so
right? And
but
I guess the thing is Roose must figure Sansa's never coming north because if she shows up at Winterfell and Jade Poole is sitting there pretending to be Arya Stark, she's gonna say, "That's not my sister.
right.
That's my friend Jane."
We're here to have a contest between which of our families belongs in here. Let me just tell you something. He is not part of my family, and therefore I win.
I win,
Yeah.
right?
So that does make sense that's what this all means, that it's Jane Poole has been conditioned to be the new Arya Stark. Well, I mean, we don't know for a fact we're right, but that seems to be the logic of that.
And can I just say that the Ghost of High Heart is on a roll
Go on
here?
then. You can say it.
Well, the Ghost of High Heart is on a roll here.
Right, I meant you can justify it. Let me put it that way.
Okay. It seems that we're headed for another successful
Okay, go on.
prophecy. Too bad she doesn't dream of lottery numbers, huh?
It's in a
She'll make it off
it's
that
in a
hill.
book we're all reading, McKelly. It wouldn't help you. You'd be sharing it
Oh,
with
right.
10,000 others.
It might. That's right. Per week, nonetheless. It might get her off that hill, though. She hit a few big jackpots. Anyway, yeah. So it seems that Tywin is going to offer generous terms to all those river lords who kneel, except for one. And the mountain is riding for Harrenhal to basically put the goat's head on a spike. And if we recall what the Ghost of Highheart's
We do
prophecy
not.
was, she said, the goat sits alone in the Hall of Kings in a fever as the great dog descends on
Uh-huh.
him.
The Great Dog. Yes, that sounds like the mountain to me.
Yes, it certainly
Mm.
does. So, And then, of course, Tyrion thinks that that Littlefinger's going to stroll into Harrenhal without any bloodshed at
Yeah.
all
So
on his part.
one question about that. Um, why is Tywin turning on the brave companions? He doesn't.
Because they turned on him.
Oh, because they did turn coat on him, right? He doesn't
Yes.
know the
Yes.
real thing that they did, though. His real reason for wanting him dead is not yet known to Tywin. Oh, please God, tell me I'm right in thinking this. Jaime.
I'm trying to think of what. Oh, he does not know that. You are
Ah,
right. Yes, he does not know that yet.
wow.
He he knows they killed Emery Lorch. He does not know about Jamie in his hand.
Right.
Then he'll really want
Right.
their heads
Bring
on a
him back
spike.
to life. I
Their
want to kill him
hands
again.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
So that wraps up all that
yeah.
stuff.
How
Let's
how
talk
was
about that
Joffrey?
monstrous
Yeah.
king.
How was Joffrey in this episode? Was he nice? Was he charming? No,
he,
he was.
he was his usual
Yeah.
charming self.
He also is incredibly short-sighted because Tywin's, basically anyone who rebels, you fight them, but anyone who kneels, you help them back to their feet. It's
Yes.
sage advice on how to run a kingdom. But Joffrey wants everyone who's ever turned against him dead. He wants Robb's head Stark brought to Sansa so that she can kiss it as part of his wedding feast, which is just
Yeah.
particularly horrible.
Terrible. And we've already played this awful game once with Ned's head
Yeah,
when he made Sansa look at Ned's head.
yeah.
But now that we've at least got some um, maybe cold-hearted and evil adults in the room, but we have some adults in the room here in King's Landing. It doesn't seem like they're going to allow
Right.
it, which
A-
is
a-
which
And
is good.
exactly, Tywin says no. I mean, well, Tyrion actually is the one who says no, but Tywin sort of like backs it up with the sort of lesson about how you should treat your enemies kind of thing. But Joffrey is not the child he was. He's been king for a while now, and he's used to getting his own way, and basically flexes his muscles and turns his fangs on his grandfather, and says that you know you hid under Casterly Rock while my father saved the realm, and it's the thing about that is a blow that's going to land because that is exactly
Yeah.
what Tywin did.
Uh-huh.
There's no escaping that.
And Tyrion notices that Tywin gets up and starts
Right.
pacing at the window, and he thinks that he's more rattled by this than he's
Yeah.
letting on. Yet, you know what? One thing I noticed about this whole sequence of dialogue here is that Cersei completely glosses over the horrible thing that Joffrey suggests and instead focuses on Tyrion calling Joff a monster and threatening him, despite Joffrey having just proposed an awful plan for Tyrion's wife. She says things like let the dwarf make all the threats he likes. I want my father and uncle to see what he is. And you heard him. He called him a monster and he threatened the king. And, you know, nothing, there is absolutely no fault being put on Joff about Joffrey. That is your aunt now. You know, there's
Right.
nothing, no, it's all just like, but look what Tyrion's doing to my poor sweet Joffrey. And then the only time she does apologize is when he says the thing that you just
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah.
about taking shots at
Yeah.
Tywin.
So there's a little sort of mini debate here as to what Joffrey is turning into. Is he turning into Robert II or to Aerys III? I think
Right.
I think it's clear to me. It's clear he's more like Aerys than he is like Robert.
Uh,
Robert had
I
plenty of
agree.
flaws, but deep down he was a decent person. Joffrey is just like Aerys in the sense that the deeper you go, the worse it gets.
Yes. I mean, Robert wanted to party and have a
Yeah,
good
that's
time.
not
He was an
Joffrey.
absent king.
Yeah,
No, Joffrey is sadistic, and he lacks the self-esteem to be confident and comfortable as the
yeah,
king. So he's always reminding people he's the
right.
king. And you know, we've discussed before about Joffrey having Ares like tendencies. Even, you know, back when Tyrion wanted to keep the pyromancers away from Joffrey for fear of what he'd do with this new destructive tool if he was made aware of it.
So Tywin thinks that Joffrey needs a sharp lesson, um, and that strikes
Yeah.
fear into Tyrion's heart a little bit because he knows the lesson he was taught when he was 13 with Tysha, but doesn't
Yes.
no matter how bad the lesson is, he doesn't think it's going to be too bad for Joffrey. He thinks that Joffrey, no one was more deserving, I think is what he says.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what he says. Yeah, and Tywin says that he thinks, he's young and there's time to straighten him
Right.
out. And
And
Dr. Honda felt the
I was
same
going to say the
way
same
when
thing.
we,
Exactly. We
yeah,
we believe that, you know, or, you know, mental health professionals would believe that there is time to get this right. And certainly what Tywin said, as I read it, I was like, that's really good advice. I mean, if you get someone to listen to that, that you could turn someone into a decent king. And
you're
also undermining them when they do things like say, I'm the king. If you undermine that, you're
right.
going to stop them from doing it. And by stopping them from doing it, you stop that attitude as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. His advice about you meet your enemies with steel and fire, but when they bend the knee, you help them to their feet is like directly out of the book of Aegon the
Right,
Conqueror. That's
right.
exactly how he won the realm in the first place.
Unified the Seven Kingdoms. That's how you do it. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Um,
I worry too though about well, I'm not sure worry is the right word. I wonder what kind of sharp lesson might we expect for Joff. And I was thinking, there's no chance that he considers Bronn's idea of removing Joff and starting fresh with the more malleable
well,
Tommen.
that's clearly not
Is
what
there?
Tywin's talking about here. Tywin's talking about trying to improve Joffrey. Mhm.
Right.
If
Yes.
if
Tywin's cold and calculating, but I don't take him for a
well,
kinslayer.
I don't know. I think he might be thinking about last chances. Let's do
Oh,
something. Let's teach him this lesson. And if
sure.
this changes him, good. And if it doesn't change him, then we think about what the
We got a
next lesson
backup.
is. Yeah. The next lesson is you should have
I
listened to
mean,
the previous lesson.
he allowed Tyrion to grow up in Casterly Rock rather than giving him up for adoption or leaving him for dead or something. And he so
Yeah, but have you read of Mice and Men? There comes a point where
I
you cut your
have.
losses, no matter how much you love them, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
maybe if you're as cold and calculating as Tywin, at least.
I'm saying it. I mean, I'm not sure I'm capable, but um, I do like the fact that Joffrey does get sent to bed, though. So, he's still powerless. And of course,
Yes, he
then
does.
Cersei is left to sort of like explain away his behavior. And she really is very keen to spread the blame away from herself, particularly in the direction of dead
Ah,
Robert, who the
yes.
kind of lesson he taught was that strong kings act boldly, and so she mentions that one. And I really love the fact that Tyrion
Yeah.
reiterates what he said about hiding under Casterly Rock, not because
Right.
he wants to get Joffrey in more trouble. He wants to remind his father of what was just said to
Right.
him.
Don't forget about that bit. Yeah. Do we really believe that Robert taught Joffrey the strong kings act boldly line? That sounds like a
Yeah,
Cersei
it
thing,
sounds
if you
exactly
ask
like a
me.
Cersei thing. I do think that the hiding under Casterly Rock thing is not something you heard from Cersei, though. That definitely sounds more like Robert.
Yeah. And I will say that we'll learn more about this mischief with the cat
Ah,
before
okay.
long, but it's not as quite as innocent as Cersei makes it out to be
Yeah,
here.
well,
So, as you probably
no
might have guessed
surprise. Yeah.
already. Yeah, I mean, Tyrion's behavior when he's around his father just continues to
Yeah,
disappoint me.
yeah. I'm with you. He resorts to flippancy around his father, which is
Yes,
exactly the opposite
too
of what you
much.
should do. His father is ready
Right.
to consult him, is ready to bring him into this fold of trusted advisors, but Tyrion just shoots from the hip all the time and tries to make jokes, and it's just.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is, I kind of share this with Tyrion, but it's a tendency that I try to curb in myself in the certain circumstances. And for some reason, Tyrion goes the opposite direction. He can't help himself but double down on the kind of, you know, joker that he is. And it's just the wrong thing to do with
Right.
his father.
Yeah, and he's too petulant and he's not helping his cause to get his
Yeah.
father to see him as a capable adult. Even calling Joff a monster wasn't. I can understand his desire to do so when after saying such a terrible thing about your wife, but it just makes him look juvenile. And then demanding to know if Cersei was told about the Red Wedding
Yeah,
plan when he wasn't told about it. And, asking, am I allowed to know your thoughts on Oberyn or
yeah,
should I
yeah,
leave so you can talk to yourself? Even offering to show Oberyn the brothels as a way to distract him is only going to irk Tywin and
yeah.
perpetuate his belief that Tyrion is this sex crazed,
I
irresponsible
think the
guy.
least of those is calling Joffrey a monster, though, because I think Tywin actually agrees with that and
Right.
appreciates the fact that Tyrion's willing to speak truth to power. But yeah, the rest of them, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's just every time they interact, I'm like,
It's
oh,
another missed
do you?
opportunity. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, he always
yeah.
does it, and it frustrates me.
So then conversation turns to the Martells, and Tywin mentions that Doran uh, is subtle, cautious, even indolent, but Oberyn is very different, half mad. Uh, but he's vexing Tyrion and Tywin alike, but also there's some interesting past history that he tried to rally Dawn for Viserys after Robert's rebellion, which is a shocking piece of news, really.
Yeah, we'll find out more about that in the
Okay,
background,
good.
but it definitely is. And John Aaron had to go to Dorne and smooth things
Yeah,
over, and Robert never
Robert never
visited
went there because I
Dorne.
think he always felt it
Yeah.
was sort of enemy ground. Interesting. Um,
Yeah. And Illyrio named many houses back in that first Dany chapter of A Game of Thrones that would back Viserys if he challenged for the Iron Throne. And, some were more legitimate than others, but it seems like the Martells might be
did
a
he list
legit
the
one.
Martells?
I honestly meant to
Okay,
look it up and I forgot to
they
do
didn't.
so, but he
Yeah, he
should
should
have.
have clearly. Yeah, yeah. Although
Yeah.
that's Oberyn, that's not Doran.
Right, right, right. Yes.
Um, So Tywin isn't going to give up Gregor. In fact, he's going to try to spin a yarn that it was Armory Lorch, and I don't think this is going to end well, given the nature of Oberyn.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, I went back and read the deal that, the at least the version that we got, and the deal was technically giving up Arya's
not
killer.
not
No
Arya's,
mention of
Elias.
names. Sorry. Yes, I meant Elia's killer. No mention of names that we were privy to anyway. So,
But
uh,
it's
you
not
know,
a secret. Everyone knows it was the Mountain,
n-
right? But they're going to
yes,
try and twist
and
history to say it was Armory Lodge.
we were there that chapter when Tyrion met with Oberyn, and he seemed pretty obsessed with the desire for vengeance. I just can't imagine him being like, Tywin like, oh, is a guy that's already dead that killed your sister, and Oberyn being like, oh, well, as long as he's dead, okay,
Yeah,
I'm good. We can move on. I just don't see that
yeah,
happening. And there's another thing that Tywin says that he plans to keep Gregor out of King's Landing as long as the Dornish are in town. But he but Tyrion offered the Martells a seat on the small council, so it might be a
yeah,
while before they're out of town
yeah.
here. So, but you know, Tywin wasn't on that road with Tyrion to see just how single-minded Oberyn was. He's here for vengeance. The small council seat is a very significant second issue.
Yeah, yeah. But Tywin then explains why he ordered Rhaegar and Elia's children to be killed. It was I mean, he didn't say it in these terms, but clearly it was because he felt a degree of guilt in being late to Robert's side, and he had to show Robert in a grand gesture that they were done with the Targaryens. Uh, it's ruthless and brutal, of course, as you'd expect from Tywin, but it also shows a concern side. That late arrival was going to be a stain that had to be scrubbed away. But he also mentions that there was relief in Robert's eyes when the bodies were laid in front of him, which is an interesting point
Yes.
because this Robert didn't do it. Robert never did it. But that relief in his eyes, there's a verisimilitude about that. It sort of rings true that he would
Yes.
realize I'm never going to be comfortable on this throne while those children live. And someone killing those
Yep.
children for me has done me a favor that I'm going to be grateful for.
That he was grateful for.
Exactly.
Tywin tells us that uh, you know Robert thought of himself as a hero and heroes don't kill
Didn't
kids.
do
So
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Ned, on the other hand, was not so grateful, and we learned a little a ways back now that there was a major falling out between Robert and Ned over Robert's reaction to the death of the children. That's when Ned stormed out of King's Landing and rode to the Tower of Joy to try and rescue Lyanna. But as I see Ned's beef here with the situation, I get it. I get why he was irked. The Lannisters waited until the end of the war to pick a side. I mean, we've talked about that a lot in this chapter. Then they jump in, sack King's Landing, kill the king, kill the Targaryen children, rape and kill Elia Martell, and instead of punishing them for their actions or lack of commitment to Robert's, to the war, Robert is relieved that the deed is done, and Ned thought of them. Ned thought of his group, Robert's side in the rebellion, as the victims here. They were fighting the evil tyrant, the Mad King Aerys. And in this one movement right here, it completely flips that. And now they're the ones killing kids and raping princesses. And, that's not what they stood for. It's not what they were trying to do. It's not what they believed in.
Yeah, and you can see how that came between Robert and Ned, because Robert sort of bought into the real politic of it. Yeah, this had to be done, and Ned just never would. And Ned's right. It's a taint on the rebellion that this happened.
Yes.
In the name of the rebellion.
Right. Yes, it was certainly not what they stood for when Ned signed on for the rebellion.
But the other thing that again, and maybe Tywin's rewriting history, but he says he didn't order Elia's murder because there was no point in Elia being murdered. She was the mother. She had no claim to the throne, and her murder is really what irks the Martells.
Yes.
The children's murder,
right.
The Martells would have been mad about that, but they would have at least understood it. But Elia's rape and murder was the mountain being the monster that he is.
We had not brought that up yet, and that's an important point to bring up is Tywin says that the reason Elia's dead is because he didn't specifically tell the mountain not to kill her.
Right.
And that's just the kind of person that the mountain is. If you don't say don't kill that person, he's gonna kill that person. Yeah. So I do find that ironic that Tywin says that even you won't accuse me of complicity in Gregor's rape of Elia, when we know that he had 100 men and Tyrion rape Tyrion's wife, Tysha. So I mean, it's a little bit ironic that he would balk at the idea of him, planning a rape.
Yeah. Just before we go to background, I will say we called the Ramsay and Arya thing. We were talking about the real Arya, but we did call it last week that might be a route for Roose if he could get hold of Arya. We had not thought of the possibility of a fake Arya being put in her place, but
all the more. And we had also thought about marrying her to a real, not a real, but a legitimate child to Walda.
Yeah.
That would be younger than her.
Yeah. All right, so do you have some background? You said you did.
I do. So Tywin mentioned that Jon Arryn brought Luwin's bones to Sunspear and helped smooth over the feud between the Martells and the new king, Robert Baratheon. Well, the Luwin that he was referring to was Prince Luwin Martell, and Luwin was a knight of the Kingsguard in service of King Aerys. We've talked about him before. He was the younger brother of the ruling princess of Dorne, who is Dorne, Oberyn, and Elia's mother. And we also mentioned before that Aerys used Elia's safety as leverage to get Luwin to lead 10,000 Dornishmen into battle at the Trident alongside Rhaegar. It was there that Luwin died. And Tyrion mentioned in this chapter about the rumor that Oberyn tried to raise Dorne in support of Viserys Targaryen. And of course, as we've also mentioned, that is because of the Martell's anger over the deaths of Luwin and Elia, and them pointing that anger toward Robert and the Lannisters. Now, bringing it all full circle, that is why Jon Arryn went to Sunspear with Luwin's bones and worked out a means of repairing the damage.
Okay, thanks. So, comparison with the television show, Sansa and Tyrion walk in the gardens. Two guys snicker at Tyrion, and Sansa tells him to ignore them. Tyrion explains that he's used to it and that he'll get his revenge his own way. He's not like Joffrey. Sansa suggests sheep shifting, hiding sheep dung in their mattresses. Tyrion realizes that she's misheard that name, but before he can explain it to her, Podrick arrives to bring him to the small council. So definitely their relationship is fonder in the TV show than it is in the book.
Right.
It's exactly in the show, it was exactly going the way we were kind of hoping it was going to go in the book, but it hasn't got there yet in the
Right.
book. Maybe never will.
Okay.
Lots of the interaction of the small council is kept. Tyrion's surprise about the news from the twins, Joffrey's delight, his plan to make Sansa kiss Robb's severed head, Tywin dressing Joffrey down, Joffrey accusing his grandfather of cowardice, Tywin sending Joffrey to bed, Cersei blaming others is skipped, but otherwise it's all there.
Okay.
Tywin and Tyrion's conversation skips the Martells, instead focuses on the consummation of Sansa and Tyrion's wedding. That's what they really talk about.
Right. All right. Good stuff.
Pedantry, I couldn't see anything. I thought this was a gold chapter. I really thought this was a great chapter. I don't know if it was just like
Yes.
the awfulness of the last few chapters, but I felt like the wind was beneath my wings reading this chapter. It was so interesting.
It was. It was a really good chapter. Yeah. I agree.
News and notes.
Well, we're creeping week by week ever closer
To a
to
plan.
our 200th to a plan for our 200th episode celebration. We do know it's happening on Discord, so now's the time to join if you're not already a member, because you're not going to want to miss it.
Heck no.
Once we figure out. No, we really think we're going to do a live episode, possibly even trying to incorporate some
Which we'll record and it'll be available as normal, but if you come on the Discord server, you can see the recording in action, and I think we'll have, some interactivity part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we've never done it before. This
Yeah.
so we're a little bit unsure how it's all going to play
It'll be a
out.
blast.
That's right.
We have a review from Edward Heron III on Audible. Fun and depth. Fun and light, but good breakdown chapter by chapter. A bit of personal information sprinkled. Good summaries and information without spoiling future details. Thank you, Edward Heron. We appreciate that very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Edward Heron III.
Let's conclude. So, no progress in the Tyrion-Sansa relationship. They are still unable to find common ground.
Right. That's unfortunately it didn't go the way that it's going in the TV show.
Yeah.
That at least looks like there's some progress.
Yeah.
They're maybe making a bit of a connection at some level anyway. And she is still visiting the Godswood on a pretty regular basis. Now, we had talked before about, quit visiting the Godswood so much. And here it sounds like, according to Tyrion, she's doing it almost every night. So
yeah, but in some ways it becomes its own sort of cover because she wants to get away from Tyrion. So she goes and does this private northern thing that nobody else would be interested in. Yeah, I mean,
yes, that's true. I guess it becomes part of a routine, and people stop thinking twice about it.
Yeah, and especially if Sodontus is only coming once every 12 days or something.
Right.
So Tywin's way forward from where we are now looks pretty orderly and logical. We got a plan for succession in River Run should they be able to get rid of the Blackfish. We've got a new Warden of the North who's got a way to claim Winterfell through fake Arya. We've got a long-term succession plan for Winterfell through Sansa and Tyrion. It's all falling into place. And we're going to have Harrenhal freed up for the new Lord of Harrenhal, Petyr Littlefinger Baelish, who has delivered a fake Arya, it seems, and perhaps the Veil.
Right, yeah. And we've got possibly a third Mad King.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. He's young.
Already knew that.
Maybe.
Okay. Dr. Honda and all, he's a monster. He's not going to change. The problem is he's not going to change because he's not going to get the lessons he needs to change,
Right. Yes, we saw...
The die isn't cast, but the only way to not cast the die is to try and mold it now, and nobody's doing that.
Right. Well, maybe now that Tywin's
he's
here,
the best hope.
He can help. But we saw in this chapter, Cersei she didn't even she barely blinked. She pretended like it was a joke when Joffrey made that comment about Sansa and Robb's head.
Yeah.
No reprimanding, no disciplining, nothing. So yeah.
We'll spend about a split second worrying about Joffrey when he gets this short lesson from Tywin, but really we'll just enjoy it.
Hopefully it's a POV chapter we get to experience.
Yeah. And then, is there any possibility that Oberyn Martell's going to be content if he's told that Armory Lorch did it all? And he's already dead.
Yeah, that's Oberyn just doesn't. Maybe if it was Doran, he might be like, okay, well, as long as he met an end that I can get behind. He didn't live to a ripe old age or something, but not Oberyn. Oberyn, I'm be curious. It'll be fun to see. Well, not fun necessarily, but it will be intriguing to see how he handles this.
Yeah. If I were Tyrion, I would maybe stay away from high politics for a while and just let Tywin talk to Oberyn. Like, you tell him.
Remember, I've got to conceive a son.
Yeah, I'll be busy every day. Yeah.
Yes.
Where are we going next time, Mackelly?
Next time, we're hopping over to Dragonstone. We're going to check into Davos POV. And news has spread. I will say that. And there's a plan to unleash a dragon. But it's not a great plan.
Okay.
It's not a great plan. And Davos picks up a new skill, a very useful new skill.
Interesting. Look forward to that. All right. There's 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review like Edward Herron III did. There's absolutely no better way. The reason we got 10,000 downloads last week is because of word of mouth, and positive reviews are the best way to do that. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal, where you could also become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level and get to meet us and have lots of fun like the other sustainers do. Or you could donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com. Any contribution will be welcome. If you can't contribute financially, go leave us a review. That's all we ask.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, but you could also go out and follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Join the Discord server. You can watch the 200th episode live.
That's right.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.